Okay, so this section, which is 19.7, is called the basement, because the base is like the foundation of the building. Even under that, it's the basement. It's the bottom floor. And I know you can't see a sign what says this text and how you spell this segment, but the basement I spelled B-A-S-S as in the base, M-E-A-N-T as it's meant to be the foundation. So here's the deal, even though it's hard to stop playing with this beat. Okay, it's hard to stop playing the bass. I really like the bass. So here's the thing. Did you ever notice that every kind of music has a bass player? Rock has a bass player, jazz has a bass player, country has a bass player, symphony orchestras have a bass player. Everybody has a bass player. All styles of music have a bass player. This is not accidental. There's a reason why everybody has a bass player. And by the way, if you are a bass player, he doesn't want to stop. If you're a bass player, it's much easier to get a gig than if you're a guitarist, because everybody in the whole world plays the guitar, and they all think it's cooler to play the guitar than to play the bass. But they're wrong. It's cooler to play the bass than to play the guitar, because the bass is really the foundation. It's the basement. And the bass player has an immense amount of power that most of the world doesn't know about unless they're bass players. Here's what the bass player can do. So the first thing is, in the band, there's not always a drummer, but there is always a bass player. So the bass player ends up controlling the tempo. The bass player controls the rate that the music flows. That's an immense amount of power. And if it's a really good bass player, they could actually make the drummer follow them too, because bass players generally have more to say about what's going on in the band than the drummer does. So first thing, bass player controls tempo. Tempo is pretty fundamental to music in every genre. Second thing, bass players control the tonal center. Bass players control what key you're in. If bass players are in the key of G and the soloist is playing in the key of G sharp, the soloist sounds wrong and the bass player sounds right. Because the bass player has control over both the tempo and the tonal center, they get to run the band if they want to. Ever hear of a guy named Paul McCartney, single most successful musician in history in terms of wealth? He's a bass player. You think he only knows how to play bass? No, he knows how to play guitar. He knows how to play piano. He knows how to sing. Why does he play bass? Because the bass player is in control, and he is a control freak. And without him, the Beatles would be not happening too much. Ever hear of a guy named Sting, bass player? He is not the founder of the Police. He joined the Police, and he had this great idea. He said, you know, if I play the lowest note on the bass and I sing the highest note in the melody, I can run the band. And guess what? He did take over the band. And not everybody was happy about that, but he was. And he was a very, very talented guy. Ever heard of a guy named Jack Bruce? There was a band called Cream. Everybody thinks it was Eric Clapton's band. No. It was Jack Bruce's band. Jack Bruce is the founder of Cream, and he brought in Eric Clapton, who was like, I don't know, 17. Jack Bruce was kind of like 21. Jack Bruce also played the cello, but it was hard to be in a hard rock band playing cello. Jack Bruce wrote most of the songs in Cream, and he sang most of the songs in Cream. And he basically got most of the gigs for Cream. So this was this superstar band called Cream. These three guys, Sting, Jack Bruce, Paul McCartney. Okay, not all bass players are household names, but some of them are. And the reason they are is because bass players have a lot of musical power. They get to control the tempo. They get to control the key that you're in. They even get to control the style, because bass players control the groove. Lead guitarists do not control the groove. Bass players control the groove. Ask Victor Wooten. He'll tell you about that. So the reason I made this segment 19.7, called The Basement, is because I don't think most of the world is consciously aware that bass players have way more power. They're not just a sideman. They're the foundation. They're the basement. When the bass player decides to change keys, if the rest of the band doesn't, they all sound wrong, and the bass player sounds right. And you want to know why? Because I'm a physicist, and the universe's energy is 1 over F. F is frequency. Bass frequencies are a smaller number than high frequencies, like 4,000. There is more energy musically in low frequencies than there is anywhere else. That's why bass players have more power than piano players and piccolo players and even sax players. Because from a physics perspective, the energy in the universe is distributed 1 over F. When F is small, when the denominator is small, the energy is high. That's, by the way, also why bass players in a rock band need a 200-watt amp when the guitar player needs a 50-watt amp, because bass needs a lot of energy, and it produces a lot of energy. So think about that. Bass players have the most energy and the most control, and when they make a mistake, everybody else sounds wrong. Think about that.